his culinary magic to Clearwater's Harborview Center in March of 1997. Prior to that, he owned and operated Metro Catering Company in Tampa, but Chef Terzak's experience reaches far outside the Tampa Bay area. He was executive chef at the American Stanhope Hotel on 5th Avenue in New York, and Gordon's, one of Chicago Magazine's top 10 restaurants in the Windy City. He owned 5 restaurants in Chicago, among them Terzak's, Chameleon, Ketchup, and Tamales. He's also consulted for top-rated restaurants in Florida, Virginia, Chicago, and New York. Chef Terzak studied culinary arts at Du Père School of French Cooking in Glenview, Illinois, and was acknowledged by Food and Wine magazine as one of the top 60 chefs in America. For years, he hosted the cable TV series Great American Cookout, but now he's the host of What's Cooking, Harborview?
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to another edition of What's Cooking, Harborview. Now, today's show is a little bit different because we're not going to do a lot of fancy cooking. What we're going to do is we're going to do all the practical and traditional techniques for cooking fish. And I have with today, for the cooking, salmon, pompano, brook trout, jumbo sea scallops, and shrimp. And what we're going to do is we're going to poach the salmon, we're going to braise the pompano, we're going to saute the trout, we're going to grill the scallops, and we're going to fry the shrimp. We're going to talk a little bit about each thing. Now, those are the 5 basic fish cooking techniques, and there's also steaming, and there's a few other little odds and ends, but we're going to focus on those 5 because those are the most traditional and the most practical. The first thing we're going to do is I'm going to talk to you a little bit about poaching. That's going to be the first thing we're going to do, poaching and braising. We're doing those together because they're kind of related. Now, the definition of poaching, which is important to understand, is to immerse the fish completely in a simmering liquid, and that's what poaching means. Now today, what we're going to use for the liquid is what we call court bouillon. And court bouillon is a combination of celery, carrots, onions, with a little bay leaves, black peppercorns, vinegar, and maybe a little bit of white wine, which is what I use today. And we're going to poach our fish in that. So this is going to go back on the fire. So we're going to have that simmering. And now, the salmon, and what I did before we started taping this morning was I used my pin boner here, which has a little spring in it so that it can open and close as you're taking the pin bones out of the fish, and you simply go along the fish like this and take all the bones out. Now, taking the skin off the fish, which is, for some reason, some people seem to think this is a difficult thing to do, but it really isn't. You take a knife that's like this, kind of like a roast knife, and you start at the bottom, and you get a little start on it, like that, see? Now, you aim the knife slightly down towards the skin. Boom, 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 boom. There you go. Skinned salmon. Now, I'm going to do, approximately about a 6 to 7 ounce portion. You notice that I cut the salmon a little bit on an angle, and the reason why is it looks a little bit more aesthetic on the plate like that, and it also even appears to be larger. Now we'll take a piece of salmon and we'll put it into the bouillon to cook like so. And later on in the show, what we'll do is after we've taken the steps of showing you how all these techniques are implemented, then I will plate all of them up for you at the end and show you a couple different sauces and mayonnaises that you can do to accompany them. Now, braising is related to poaching a little bit because the fish is submerged, not necessarily all the way, in a liquid. And we're going to use court bouillon for the braised pompano too. This is the same thing that I'm poaching the salmon in, only we're going to braise the pompano in this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pompano and I'm going to stick it in here like that. And I'm going to put a little towel over it, like that, and I'm going to put it inside the oven. Now you braise that in the oven for approximately, for a fish that size, which is 1.5 to 2 pounds, probably about a half an hour, maybe 40 minutes tops, or until it's tender. And we'll take that out and finish it in a little while. So that is the first technique, which is poaching and braising, and they're kind of interrelated. And we're going to be right back now, and we're going to show you how to do sauteed brook trout. All right, now for sauteing. Now remember, we've got our salmon poaching in a quart bouillon, and we've got our whole pompano braising in the oven, and we're braising that at about 400 degrees, 350. You don't want to blast it too much. Okay, now, sauteing. The definition of sauteing is to cook quickly in hot fat for the purpose of browning. Okay, so typically when you saute something, it's usually a thin fillet of fish, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. Because sometimes you can saute it on top of the stove and then put the entire saute pan in the oven, and you can bake it a little bit in the oven to finish it. That way you can get the sauteed effect on the outside of the fish, even though it's a little too thick to completely cook on top of the stove. Okay, so brook trout. Now, I did the same thing by taking the little pin bones out as I did with the salmon. Now, I usually take the bellies off. And by the way, when you're skinning your salmon, you want to have your belly off. Otherwise, it's very difficult to take the skin off the way I did, too. So I'm going to trim a little bit of the belly off of the trout. I'm going to trim it a little bit on a curve. Now, I usually kind of like to leave the tail on because then it still resembles a fish a little bit when it's on the plate. Now, you can also take this and cut the spine bone out and have two fillets and saute them. But today I'm going to saute the whole trout. So first and most importantly is the salt and pepper. And we're going to take this back to the stove and dust it with a little bit of flour and put it in a hot pan and saute it. Alrighty, now, to saute that trout. Now, I left the skin on this, by the way, and some fish you want to leave the skin on and some you don't, and it depends on whether or not you like to eat fish skin, really. But if it's a real thin skin and you can make it crispy like we're going to do here, it should be all right. Now, one of the things that people saute in is either oil or fat, and we're going to use butter fat today, and this is what we call clarified butter. And what it is it's butter that's melted with all the casing solids and water taken out. So it's just the fat, because this won't burn as quickly and it'll be able to transmit the heat without burning the fish. So we got ourselves a nice hot pan here. We're going to put a little bit of butter in there. When it's smoking, you know that's good, because to saute something, like I said, the definition is to saute quickly in hot fat. Now, we just dust that a little bit and then how? It's probably only going to take about 2 minutes to do this. Now, our salmon, by the way, that we're poaching back here is right about done. So I'm going to take it out. And we'll set it down here. And then we'll just drop it in the water and reheat it slightly when we're ready. Now, on the trout, I'm making a special dish for you, too, at the same time. Besides showing you how to saute the trout, is I'm going to make what we call meuniere, or caper butter. And that's going to be where, after the trout's cooked, we'll take it out and put it on the plate, and we're going to put parsley and lemon juice on the fish. Then we're going to brown some whole butter with some capers, and we're going to pour it over the top. Then we're going to put a little bit of sour cream with some caviar on top. Some inexpensive caviar that I bought at Publix. Okay. This fish is just about done on the one side here. Now, if it's not browning fast enough for you, which I don't think this is, just throw a little piece of whole butter in there. That'll help brown it faster. Now, one little trick when you're sauteing something like this in fat, so that you don't splash grease all over your face or your arms, is to tilt all the fat down away from you, you see, in the pan, and then flip the fish like that. There we go. See how nice and brown that is? In about 1 more minute, this fish is going to be done. Now, what are the two single biggest problems in the kitchen? The first is overcooking the food, and the second is doing the same thing twice because you screwed it up the first time. So, addressing the first issue, which is overcooking the food, this fish cooks so fast. I mean, it is, if you want it nice and juicy, I'm just trying to crisp up the skin, just a little bit on the bottom. Okay, this fish, believe it or not, is done. I'm going to take it, set her on a plate. Now, I'm going to throw off that butter there, and I'm going to put a little bit of whole butter in here with a few capers. Capers, which are pickled flower buds, in fact, that are imported from France. Very nice. This is a very traditional kind of way to do this. Now, here's the key. Now, let's say you're serving this at your house. You put the parsley on the fish, and you put the lemon juice right directly on the fish. The definition of fish sautéed a la Meunière, which is what we're doing, is the brown butter going over the lemon juice and the crackling noise that it makes, which is so nice. And so what you want to do is, when you serve this, is you get your fish on the plate, you put your parsley and your lemon juice on it, then you get your hot brown butter, and you set this down in front of your guests, just like this. Then, in a little gooseneck, or coffee creamer or something like that, you put your hot brown butter and you pour it over the fish, and it will make this noise right here. See the cracklings, and you fry the parsley a little bit. See, there you go. Very simple, and that's the name of the show today: simplicity and understanding the techniques for cooking the fish. This gives you the power to cook the fish, any fish, once you understand how all the basic techniques are. And we're going to put a little dollop of sour cream on here, just for fun. And put a little smidgen of caviar on there for fun. Yeah, we'll throw some scallions on there. Nice. Okay, sautéed trout a la Meunière. All right, now that was your sautéed trout Meunière. Now we're going to talk about grilling and frying. Now, first of all, let's talk about the definitions of grilling and frying. The definition of grilling, not to be confused with broiling, is when you take food and put it on top of hot iron grids that has fire underneath it, or heat at least, if not flames. And broiling, of course, is when you put the heat on top of the food. So we're not going to deal with broiling, because grilling is much more effective in terms of imparting flavor. Because you've got to remember the difference between cooking and not cooking. Cooking is when you impart flavor and you change and improve as the food's going through the processes of being ready for eating. This is what cooking is. Bombarding it with heat until it's no longer raw is not exactly cooking. Okay. So, and broiling has a tendency to do that. Where grilling, the bars have a tendency that the food is sitting on, they stay hot, and therefore they have the ability to continue to brown the fish directly, which is the flavor that you get from grilling that you don't get from broiling. Now, we're going to do two different kinds of grilling things. First, we're going to handle these beautiful U10, what they call U10. That means there's less than 10 of these to a pound, sea scallops. Now, first, we're going to give them a little salt and pepper. And we're going to do them two different ways. The first way is we are going to flour, egg, and breadcrumb, which is the basic three-step technique for breading things. Not the only technique, but the one most used. So there's your nice breaded sea scallop. Now, most people have not seen scallops or any fish breaded and then grilled, but that's what we're going to do to these today. And in addition to that, we're also going to grill some with nothing on them at all. The only thing we're going to put on them is a little bit of oil. Now, that's the grilling setup right there. Now, for the frying, we're going to do frying two different ways. We're going to do what we just did with the scallops, with the shrimp, which is flour, egg. You'll notice I'm not flour and egging the tails, because you want to be able to pick those up and eat them with those. All right, there's your two shrimp. But the other thing we're going to do, and what we call is making fritters. And a fritter is something that's dipped in fritter batter first. Now, I made a fritter batter here earlier, and my fritter batter recipe is 1 cup of all-purpose flour and 2 egg yolks, thinned out with a little warm water and seasoned with salt and pepper and strained. And that's what I've got here. So whenever you're going to make fritters with batter, you always flour the product first, then you drop it in the batter. This is all basic nuts and bolts techniques for cooking this kind of thing. So we're going to go over to the fryer and the grill, and we're going to grill the scallops 2 different ways, and we're going to fry the shrimp 2 different ways. See you at the grill. Well, alrighty then, we're at the grill. Now, you want to make sure that your grill is very, very hot. This is an important thing too. And you have to understand that you don't always cook your food just on the hot part. Sometimes you kind of sear it and char it on the hot, then you move it over to the warm part to finish cooking. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the breaded scallops, and we're going to dip them in a little bit of that clarified butter, and we're going to mark them on the grill. And you got to do that quickly, because whenever you got breadcrumbs on the grill, it'll burn fast. Because these scallops are so thick, the technique that we're going to use here is we're going to char them up on the grill first, and then we're going to put them on a little pie pan and bake them in the oven. First, we'll make some crisscrosses on them, little lattice marks. Oh, we lost one. Look at that. Oh. Nice, nice, nice. These are some jumbo sea scallops. I don't know if you can find them this big in a supermarket. I think you can get pretty close, though. All right, now we're going to take them, and we're going to put a little bit of butter on a little pie pan, or whatever little gratin dish you want to use, cookie sheet or whatever, for finishing your stuff in the oven. Now we're going to pop these in the oven and cook them all 300 degrees for about 5-10 minutes. And remember, those jumbo sea scallops, you want them a little bit medium in the middle, not completely cooked through. They're most enjoyed that way. Now, without the breading, we'll just take the regular scallops, put some clarified butter on them. We already salted and peppered them over there on the table earlier. We'll put a little bit more on that. Okay, now while those are cooking, we are going to slide over to the deep fryer here. Now, if you don't have a deep fryer at home, which very few people do, you just take yourself a tall saucepan and fill it maybe 1/3 of the way with your favorite frying oil and get the temperature up to 350 to 375, give or take. You just test it with a little bit of batter, maybe, if you're using the batter. Okay, so now the shrimp that I breaded, this is a piece of cake. Boom. You just drop it in the fryer, no problem. Now the shrimp that I floured and put in my fritter batter, just mix it up a little bit, give it a little shake. You know, frying, everybody kind of seems to know how to do it, but you know what? If you don't do it just the right way, it doesn't come out that good. Okay. Now we'll give that a little shake. We'll let that cook for a minute. Now, let's take a look at our sea scallops here. Looking good. You want to put those little lattice marks on them as if they were a steak, you see? Anything that falls off, you should eat. Okay. All right, back on this fryer. I love these things. These are so nice. Let's see what they look like now. Well, that one didn't turn out perfect, but that's the breaks, you know? As long as it tastes good, that's the only thing that matters. If you want perfection, you got to buy it frozen off of an assembly line. Okay, those fried shrimp look beautiful. That was easy enough. Now, let's say you want to have a little bit of a lighter batter. What you do is you take your fritter batter, and the way tempura batter is made, at least the French-style tempura batter is, you take beaten, stiff egg whites and mix it into your fritter batter before you start the process of flouring the fish and dipping it in the batter. Then you have that fluffier, lighter kind of batter. All right, these are done. Look at that. Perfect, perfect, perfect. This almost looks like tempura, actually. Okay, we're going to cook these for a few more minutes, and I'm going to take this all back over to the table. We're going to put all these things on plates, and I'm going to show you how to make remoulade mayonnaise, which is one of those, it's like a French tartar sauce, and some basic lemon butter sauce that we'll be able to garnish all these with. All right, we're back with the recap of the 5 different cooking techniques that we did today for cooking fish. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make some lemon butter sauce, which is a basic butter sauce that will go with all these fish, or any kind of fish you want to make, really. Now what I did was I took a cup of heavy cream and I reduced it down to this bubbly lava type texture, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, while it's hot and boiling on the stove, 1 pound of butter, a little bit at a time, that's nice and cold, cut up and whisked into it. It's boiling away here. Now you want to make sure that you don't let it boil excessively, because it will separate. Now, this butter is about 80 to 90%, I mean this sauce is about 80 to 90% butter. So the reduced cream will fortify this sauce in such a way that you'll be able to keep it warm in a little bit of a hot water bath or steam table if you want to make it ahead of time before your guests come over. Okay, I'm just finishing up. I put about 1 pound of butter for 1 cup of cream. Okay, that's good enough for me. Now, I'm going to put a little bit of lemon in there, and a little bit of salt and pepper. Now this is kind of like a base butter sauce, and what you can do is you can make it with lemon, you can make it with a lot of lemon, you can put your chopped dill in there, or your tarragon, basil, or any really flavor you want. You can put whole mustard seeds, mustard, a combination of dried herbs if you don't have fresh, capers. This is kind of like a base sauce, which is neat. You can make kind of any flavor you want on it. I've even put pureed avocado in it. Okay, now let's give that a little taste. This is good. Now, the other sauce I'm going to show you how to make is remoulade sauce, which I said was kind of like a French tartar sauce. And it's very basic and very simple. And you start with either commercial or homemade mayonnaise, and you add a few capers, those pickled flower buds, a little bit of garlic, or a lot of garlic if you like a lot of garlic, some chopped scallions or chopped chives, some chopped hard-boiled egg, a little bit of chopped fresh anchovy, and a little bit of fresh lemon, without the pits, of course. Okay. And a little bit of fresh pepper. And we're just going to mix that up. Now let's say you want to make this mayonnaise sauce. What you'll do is you just thin this out with some heavy cream until it's more of a sauce consistency, and you have what you call remoulade sauce versus remoulade mayonnaise. All right, now let's do a little bit of final assembly here now. First, on the poached salmon, I put it back in the bouillon to warm it up a little bit. And now we're just going to take it out and put it on a little dish like this. Put a little bit of the vegetables with it. And a little bit of the bouillon broth. That looks nice. And then what I did was I boiled a few little new potatoes. that I peeled, and we're going to add a little bit of that to the salmon. So I dipped them in a little bit of butter, then we'll roll them in some parsley, like that. We'll put a little potato on there. Okay, so there, and finally we'll put just a little touch of butter sauce on top of here too. There we go. Nice. And a little touch of parsley. We have one more dish, which is the braised pompano, to pull out of the braising pan that we had it in from when we started this show. In the beginning, this was one of the first things we did. Now this is cooked for about 40 minutes, and it is cooked all the way through, and it's nice and tender. Let's take a little bit of this veg too. A little bit of the carrot. And we'll throw a little potato on there. Oh, and we can do whatever we want. We'll throw a few capers on here. And we'll throw little scallions on here. And I think with this sauce, I'll just add a little bit of garlic right on top of the fish, like this. And then I'll put the butter sauce right on top of it. So it's kind of like a little bit of a garlicky butter thing here. And I got a little bit of tomato left here. We'll put a little tomato on there. Where's that guy's face at? Oh, there he is. Okay. There we go. A little bit of parsley. Voila. Now what you have here is 5 cooking techniques for cooking fish that are all very codified and practical. And for the recap, it was grilling, sautéing, poaching, frying, and braising. Voila. And I hope you catch something next time you get out there, because I don't know how to fish, and I couldn't catch any of this if my life depended on it. That's what's cooking at Harborview. See you next month.
Thank you.